Once upon a time, I used to love Pokemon games. I used to consider myself a hardcore Pokemon fan. Now, as time went on, I realized that hardcore Pokemon fans are actually terrifying, so I started considering myself an average Pokemon fan. But I'll quickly run through the formalities. I was in grade school in the late 90s, Pokemon Blue and Pokemon Yellow were my first games, Squirtle is my favorite Pokemon, and since that first Pokemon Blue game that I had, I've chosen the water Pokemon every single time because of how much I love Squirtle. I had binders full of Pokemon cards through most of my life, although there was a flood in my mom's basement about 10-15 years ago, and I lost all of those Pokemon cards in that flood. Prior to the Switch, the only Pokemon games that I had ever skipped was actually Gold and Silver, which when I replayed later on in adulthood, I realized were the best ones. Although when I did play the Gold and Silver games, it was on the DS, and I thought they were phenomenal. As a matter of fact, when Pokemon Diamond and Pearl came out, that's when I ordered a DS for myself and my brother used off of eBay, and that was before I knew how to drive. So I took my bike, it was in the middle of the winter where there was snow, and I rode my bike to the post office to pick it up because they didn't deliver it to my house. And I actually got chased by a dog. True story. I rode past an auto shop and the dog wasn't wearing a leash and he chased me and I fell off my bike and he bit me in the thigh, but it wasn't that hard of a bite and I didn't care because I wanted to play Pokemon, apparently. Anytime a Pokemon game would come out, I would have to buy it almost immediately on release. And if I didn't buy it on release, I bought it shortly after. So for example, when I bought the 3DS, I paid the full launch price for the 3DS and I bought Pokemon Black 2 with it, even though it wasn't a 3DS game. Although there weren't that many launch games for the 3DS. But the point is, I've played all of the games. Now, I haven't necessarily played both versions of every generation, but I played at least one version, and oftentimes I would play more than one. I was never really into the Pokemon community. I never got into the meta about all of the different stats and what types you're supposed to use for different types of battles. Like, I was a very casual player, but I bought every single game. When Pokemon Go came out, I used to go on 3-hour walks. And when they changed it from being a proper scavenger hunt, I continued to go on those 3-hour walks because it was still fun enough for me. Which naturally meant when Pokemon Let's Go came out, I figured, yeah, this is worth it, I'll buy this too. But then Pokemon Sword and Shield came out. And let's put it this way, I didn't hate Pokemon Sword and Shield, but it made me feel nothing. I had never felt like a game was such a waste of time as much as I did when I played that one. And even while I was playing it, I never necessarily felt like it was a waste of time, but it was after I finished it and put it away and completely forgot about it that I realized how lame it was. And up until recently, I don't think I realized why. See, when Pokemon was a handheld franchise, there was always somewhat of a charm for the way that the game played and felt. I never felt as if they were the most groundbreaking games on the handheld consoles that they were on, but I also didn't feel like they needed to be. Like a lot of people would complain about the way the sprites moved or the way that the backgrounds looked, and that didn't really bother me because when I'm playing Pokemon, I didn't need that. And even when I played Pokemon Let's Go, I knew what I was getting myself into. This was meant to look the same way Pokemon Go did, and to just be kind of like a fun modern-day nostalgia trip where I remember playing Pokemon Yellow. At least in my mind, that's what I was feeling when I was playing it. But something about Sword and Shield just felt lazy. And I'm somebody that generally doesn't care too much about the frame rates, doesn't care too much about the resolutions, doesn't care too much about the graphics. But even I, when I was playing Pokemon Sword and Shield, felt offended? Is that the right word to use here? And I mostly felt it because I felt the game lacked any form of charm. It felt lifeless. It felt soulless. So let's put it this way. I played new Pokemon Snap pretty much as soon as it came out on the Nintendo Switch 1. I actually have a video of it, and it's one of like the first 3 or 4 videos that were ever uploaded on this channel. I don't know what the general consensus of that game is now. I think there are a lot of people that are critical of it because they feel like Pokemon currently is following the same style that Pokemon Snap was, but that could just be me misremembering what people were saying online. But what I do know is a reason why I genuinely enjoyed new Pokemon Snap a lot was because watching the Pokemon run around, watching them interact with their environment, watching their little reactions on their faces was very enjoyable for me. It had charm. They looked cute. They looked playful. And I don't know exactly where they slipped and which way they didn't course correct, but when I got to Sword and Shield, I no longer felt that in the game. Which I suppose makes sense because Pokemon Snap, part of the whole goal of that game is to give you these Pokemon living in their natural habitat, so you're supposed to relate to how they live. And in Sword and Shield, it's more of an RPG. But the problem is when things are lifeless in a console that was made after 2015 and has the capability of going up to the standards of that era, you would expect more from a company that generally puts a lot of love into the way their games feel when you play them. The emotions that you would feel when you play them. Like, put it this way, when I saw Brilliant Diamond and Pearl coming out, that actually interested me more than Scarlet and Violet. I didn't play either of them, but if I was to ever go back to one of them, I would probably go towards Brilliant Diamond, because I have very little faith in Scarlet and Violet being able to replicate that charm that Pokemon is supposed to be known for. Now, based off of many people's reactions, Brilliant Diamond does not live up to that charm either, but at least if you set the cost of these games to the side, when I look at Brilliant Diamond, I can say, yeah, they decided to go for a chibi art style because they're not trying to overreach and do more than they should, be what they aren't. But again, that's with the assumption that you're setting the price to the side. Now, Legend Arceus, I put a few hours into it, but not nearly as much as I would have hoped that I did, considering it was a full-blown game and everybody loved it. The problem I had with Pokemon Legends Arceus was that while on the surface looking at the game, it felt like a good evolution for Pokemon, pun intended, I guess, but it just still felt boring, felt lifeless. Like, I'll give you 3 different games that I had played around that same time frame, and while all 3 of them were not nearly perfect, looking back at it now, they've resonated with me significantly more as positive memories. So Tears of the Kingdom was a big one. It came out 6 months later. A lot of people have complained over time about the drops in frame rate and about the way that it runs and chugs along. And I, as somebody that doesn't care too much about performance, don't even notice drops in performance a lot of the times. I enjoyed Tears of the Kingdom a lot, and I actually didn't even feel like it was bad. Now, don't get me wrong, I completely understand that I am a rarity in that case, and many others have pointed out just how many flaws there are in that game, but this is just to give you an idea about how low my threshold is for these things. Another game was Sonic Frontiers in 2022. Again, it was a very love it or hate it title. It had a lot of graphical complications. There was a whole crap ton of poppin' from the distance when you would run around with Sonic. And that was with me playing it on the Series X, not even on the Switch. But despite that, when I was playing through Sonic Frontiers, I felt a lot of heart in that title. And don't get me wrong, a lot of that was in the story, in the characters, in the vibes through most of the title. But again, it resonated with me, and it led me to making a ton of Sonic games and playing through the entire Sonic franchise for my channel because of how much I enjoyed that game. And even a game like Halo Infinite, a game that has a campaign that's pretty underwhelming for a lot of Halo fans, although many of them swear by it. And it's an entirely different genre, but it has that same open world, different hub vibe to it. But again, when I played that game, I felt like it had heart to an extent. And it was the same heart, the same charm, the same soul I felt in all 3 of those titles that has made me remember them fondly, even if I haven't revisited them. But I couldn't make it through Pokemon Legends Arceus, and I have very forgettable memories of Pokemon Sword and Shield. Like, it's not even hatred. I'm not one of those rah-rah, let's kill all Pokemon games people. I just completely fell out of interest with all of the Pokemon games, starting when it came to the Switch. And likewise, I have zero interest in Pokemon Legends ZA. Like, it looks a little bit crisper, it looks a little bit cleaner, well, specifically on the Switch 2 in the trailers, but it still has that feeling of laziness that I just can't shake off when I look at these games. That mundane and boring look that you can tell does not have any charm or passion put in by the person that was making the game behind it. And for all I know, Pokemon Legends ZA might be one of the best Pokemon games ever made. A lot of people said Pokemon Legends Arceus was phenomenal. But there's something about the way that these games look, the way they feel, the way they run, that's just very off-putting. And I didn't quite start to understand why until I saw trailers and footage of Palworld. Now, let's put it this way. I haven't played Palworld. I don't even know if it's a good game. There's guns with the Pokemon that are in that game, and I don't know if I like that. I think I dabbled with it for a little bit, but I don't think I played an extended play session on it. But when I look at trailers, when I see footage of that game, when I see how other people speak about that game, I see that charm. I see what people are feeling when they're playing through that title. And I see a lot of what I used to feel when I would play older Pokemon games. Now, this video kind of got inspired because I decided to go back and look at the Xbox showcase, which I couldn't really watch originally because I was so wrapped up with the Switch 2 launch. And honestly, I wanted to do a video on the Rogue Ally, not even on Pokemon, but I figure I can do both. And specifically, while searching all of this Xbox stuff, I wanted to see the game that Game Freak was making. Beast of Reincarnation looks amazing, but I think there's more to it than just the way that it looks. Now, to be clear, Game Freak has made non-Pokemon games in the past. They are not bound to Pokemon. They're not even bound to Nintendo. But every single time Game Freak makes something outside of the Pokemon world, everybody always loses their mind because they're like, what do you mean Game Freak is making a non-Pokemon game? How does that work? And it's always a showcase of something that looks really good, making people think that they're definitely not trying when they're making a Pokemon game. Now, in defense of the developers of these other games, allegedly, from my understanding, there are 2 different production teams at Game Freak, and one of them specifically works on the Pokemon stuff. At least I think that's been the case since this previous generation, for the past 6 to 8 years. And based off of some quotes that I've read, it seems as though their production teams are Production Team 1 and Production Team 2, and Production Team 2 is the one that focuses on Pokemon, which means the team that is in charge of the largest, most profitable franchise in world history, I think, is their number 2, their secondary priority. And I think that says a lot. Now, in fairness, it could just be 2 names, right? Here's Team 1 and Team 2. Doesn't mean that Team 1 is more important than Team 2, but it sure feels like it when looking at anything that they do outside of Pokemon. And I mean, in fairness, Pokemon has been recycled the same type of gameplay over and over again, so they might not need as much effort put into those games. But at the same time, if they don't need that much effort put into those games, why are they always so underwhelming? So it is a bit of a head scratcher. Now, like I said, Beast of Reincarnation looks very cool, and it looks like it's being made by some very competent developers. And it's just weird to see Game Freak developing a game that looks like this. And this game could completely stink, don't get me wrong, but it's that initial reaction when you see it and you're just like, oh, they're the same one that made this. That's okay, that's interesting. But the thing is, when Game Freak makes another game, like they made an RPG called Town, which wasn't groundbreaking by any means, and a lot of people felt it was very underwhelming, but it looked like it had a lot more heart than anything we had seen on the Switch in their Pokemon franchise. But regardless of how good it looks, Beast of Reincarnation does not look like a Pokemon game. So even though this kind of highlights how capable Game Freak is, it doesn't really make me feel like this is how a Pokemon game could look. And then I saw something that I had completely missed over the past week. The trailer for Aniimo. And look, let's put it this way. If there is no lawsuit from this game for Nintendo, then there has gotta be some weird corruption going on where they're not allowed to sue them for whatever reason. They had a 5-minute overview trailer of this game come out a few days after the showcase. And I swear, if you told me this was the game that Game Freak is making for the Xbox Series X, I would have believed that significantly more than Beast of Reincarnation. Because this looks like how Pokemon should look if they were to continue with this same art style. And I realize this is just a trailer, and it's on a console that's significantly more powerful than the Nintendo Switch 2 will be, than the Nintendo Switch 2 is. But they show some gameplay footage in this, and if this is what Pokemon looked like when you were playing, man, can you imagine? This Aniimo trailer has appealed to me so much that it's the reason why I decided to make this video, because I'm watching this, and for the first time in a very long time, I want to play a Pokemon game. But not Pokemon, I want to play this. Like when I saw Palworld, I was intrigued, but I didn't feel like, oh, I have to go out and play that game now. But for this one, I'm adding it into my upcoming releases notepad that I have on my phone. I'm playing this game, assuming Nintendo doesn't find a way to shut it down. And I'm playing it specifically because of my love for the Pokemon franchise. And of course, I have to caveat that this game could be entirely terrible, and it could have the worst reviews ever, and at that point I'd be like, okay, well, it looked good and they had my interest, but I'm not gonna play it. But based off of the first impressions, I have not seen a trailer do anything for me the way that the trailer for this game did when I saw it. It has completely tugged at the heartstrings of this longtime former Pokemon fan. Like, I'm watching this and I'm remembering those funny little cartoon magazines that they had when Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire came out. If it's on the screen right now, that means I found a picture of it online. If it's not on the screen, it means I couldn't find it. But basically, I remember there were people that were just making faces that looked like the Pokemon. So somebody was imitating a Shroomish, for example, and they put their turtleneck over their chin. And the point is there's nostalgia involved in this conversation. In any case, I've been wanting to do a Pokemon type video for a very long time, but I didn't really know where to start and what I should be saying. It seems like a very touchy subject. Like, I feel like it's a lot easier to criticize Nintendo than it is to criticize Pokemon, because criticizing Pokemon is just its own can of worms. And not just that, like, when I criticize Nintendo, I feel like I am a true, proper, hardcore Nintendo fan doing it. When I criticize Pokemon, I don't know if I have that same kind of belief in myself as a hardcore Pokemon fan anymore. So I rather just let other people that understand the franchise and the series a lot more than I do take care of those criticisms. But just seeing that Aniimo trailer really kind of got me excited. And considering that one of the Switch 2 launch window titles is Pokemon Legends ZA, it just makes the underwhelming feelings I had towards the Switch 2 for that opening launch window even more underwhelming. Don't get me wrong, Bonanza and Metroid Prime 4 were still very appealing to me, are still very appealing to me. Even Mario Kart World, like, I'm not going to buy a console for Mario Kart World, but I will buy Mario Kart World if I get the console. But just looking at what's coming with Pokemon Legends versus what's coming with Aniimo, for example, it's not even fair to compare at that point. And I realize others might feel differently. It's your prerogative, I guess. And I realize that Pokemon Legends ZA is a Switch 1 and a Switch 2 game, so it's a little bit weaker, and that this is just the opening launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, so we should give it time to let it see if it shines and it gets better in the upcoming year or two. But at that point, yeah, that's why I'm not buying a Switch 2, because I'm waiting for them to show me why it's worth it. When those games start to roll out, that's when I think it would be worth it for a lot of people to buy in. Because as it stands, there isn't too much that's just really making me feel like I'm missing out on anything. And seemingly there are many others that feel the same way. But we'll see how it plays out over time. Regardless, I just wanted to share this video real quick. I may be back late at night for another video, haven't decided yet. Otherwise, I imagine there'll be something early tomorrow. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you on the next one.